I'm a lecturer at Digital Arts and Entertainment. That's a 3-year degree, a bachelor degree program, and located in West-Vlaanderen for West University College. So I want to give you a quick and brief introduction about Digital Arts and Entertainment. We will start with a video showing off some students' work, give you a little impression of what we do. So, there's no video. Show you like that. So, the things you saw were all made by students. And in Digital Arts and Entertainment, we mainly focus on game development, but also other interactive 3D applications. So, for example, what are interactive 3D applications? One, you have game development, Second branch is animation and visual effects, and another one is product visualization with high poly modeling. Then all other stuff of visualizations, architectural, some product line visualization, all things like that. So why did we start digital arts and entertainment? First of all, you have to know something about the game industry in the past. So in the past you had like a group of artists in the game industry and a group of programmers. So they only knew about their own topic. So programmers didn't know what artists had to do to create their art. And the other way around, so artists didn't know what programmers did and how the entire game engine pipeline worked and how they created their engines. So it just did their own stuff. So there was a little gap between those two parties. And yeah, that caused some problems because artists did it their own way, but they didn't know how the engine worked. So they delivered wrong assets or wrong model types or things like that. So that's why we thought, let's fill that gap. And there is a profile called technical artists. That's a person who knows about both worlds. So he can do arts and he can do technical stuff. Mainly he has also always a bigger focus on one of those topics. So digital arts, if a student comes from digital arts, he's ready to work in the game industry as a technical artist. So we are located in Belgium, but we also have an international focus. So all lessons are in English, and we have a lot of international students. So if you're interested in game development, come and join us. So a little bit more information about our curriculum. So it's 3 years, and the first year is the orientation year. That's for every student the same, so every student has to follow the same courses. And from the second year they can choose between 2 tracks. One track is major 3D arts and another track is major game development. So what's the difference between those 2 tracks? It's just a shift in focus. So the major 3D arts will focus more on the artistic part of game development, while the major game development focuses more on the technical side of game development. So the orientation year, so that's the same for every student. So every student has pre-production. That's just learning to draw, drawing stripes, lines, and then shading, perspective drawing, just concept arting. Then they also have 3D, the basics of modeling, also unwrapping, texturing, shading, just the entire pipeline to create 3D content for games. Another course is programming. Every student learns to program in C++. That's because the industry uses a lot of C++, and if you know C++, it's easier to learn new programming languages because it's kind of the base of most programming languages. We also have applied math and physics. Game development is all about mathematics and physics, so we all learn about vectors, matrices, gravity, velocity, acceleration, topics like that. And the last course is integration. That's a course to learn them about what are games, how are games made, what's the philosophy behind games, what's the psychology behind games, how do I make my game interesting. So that's about it for the first year. Then in the second year, if they choose for the major 3D arts, they have courses like pre-production and post-production. That's just more advanced stuff of concept arting and shading. Post-production is about visual effects, making trailers for your game, so just the post of the production. 3D and animation. 3D, they already had some 3D in the first year, but now they're seeing more advanced 3D modeling techniques. They learn to model in high poly, so for product visualizations. They also have a course animation, doing animations for games or for animation movies. Programming for artists is more about scripting. So a lot of 3D packages have their own scripting language. 3ds Max has Max script, Maya has Python. So we learn the artist to script to reach a high productivity. If you can do it by scripting, it's a lot faster than doing it by hand. And integration, that's a shared course between 2 tracks. And integration, we have little teams of, well, for example, a team of 4, 2 people from the arts track and 2 people from the game development track. And together they have to make games. So people from the arts track will make the concept art and content and 3D, and so all the art things of the project, and the 2 other persons of the game development track will do all the technical stuff. So choosing the engine, coding everything together, implementing gameplay. So together they create a project. Then we have also the major game development. So that's the more technical side of digital art and entertainment. That's also the courses that I lecture. So we have 3D for games. So the game developers still have some 3D, but it's mostly low poly modeling. So creating low poly content to use in games. And level design, we use the Unreal Engine for that. So they have to create a level and think about tactical place to set objects. Just create a level. You still have programming, still C++, learning about DSTL, advanced programming techniques, and graphics programming. They learn to create games using DirectX and C++. So in graphics programming, they learn the basics about DirectX, and we build it until they have their own engine, so with shadow mapping, post-processing, lights, so an entire engine to create a game. We also have tool development and platform development. Tool development is about creating tools. We use, most of the time we use C# for that, C# and WPF, XAML, to create tools for your for an engine, or tools to do things easier. For example, creating a level editor for a game that they made. They do that in C#, so that's a tool that makes your work a lot easier and faster. And platform development. They learn to program for all sorts of devices, like PlayStation, Xbox, iPad, you name it. And they also have integration, so that's the shared course between both tracks, together with the major arts. We also encourage them to participate in international competitions. One of them is, of course, the Microsoft Imagine Cup competition. That's a great way to show your project to the public and to get known in the world and to get noticed by Microsoft. So we're basically the only university worldwide that reached the finals 5 years in a row. We also had some 2 third and second places. So I will show you some videos about some of the Imagine Cup entries. So this one is from Imagine Cup 2008. It's called Future Flow, and they reached the 2nd place. I hope it's going to work. Does everybody know what the Magic Cup is about? Yes? So you also know that the last few years there were some rules about what you game just use and what's it about. So you had the Millennium Goals, so you know about that, the team. So this year the rules are changed. There's no more team, and you're not restricted to the XNA platform, so you can create your game in whatever engine or framework you want, and still join the Imagine Cup competition, so that's great. So in 2009 we had 2 teams in the top 5. Then 2010, yeah, we just submitted the game from 2009, and the year after that they reached the 3rd place, so okay, that kind of stuff works. So last year, so the last Magic Cup, we had 3 entries for the Magic Cup, and one of them reached the finals and got to the 3rd place, and 2 other teams reached the 2nd round. So I will show you the videos of those 3 teams. So I'll start off with the winners. I'll fix influence. Okay, let's open it with something else. Can't open it. Okay. It will be without sound, with a little bit of sound.
We live in a world with a lot of problems. We don't always know about these problems. We have to realize we all have to work together and need to understand how we influence each other. We influence.
So this is basically the game. Yeah, you just have to influence other people by placing some kind of influence markers. So those are those green spheres you see. So you have to convert all the red ones into green ones. That's the basic idea about it. Then there's also Edu Drive. That's about a cab driver who has to drive kids in school in Africa. So you're driving with a cab.
Although there is the opportunity to go to school,
So this is a school.
there are still a lot of problems that prevent them from going. That's why they can use all the support we can give. So you will be their pillar of support. Pick up kids. Bring them to school. Save kids.
So yeah.
To try for education.
And the last year was Quantum. Here we go. So you're a robot and you have to help a town to create a sustainable environment. So those games were all made in XNA. More about that. So They also have to do an internship at the third year, and then they can choose their own company where they want to do the internship. So a lot of students are accepted at some big companies. So one of them was a level designer at DICE, worked on Battlefield 3. Then somebody else also with DICE as a modeler and environmental artist. A character artist at 2K Games, working on Mafia 2. A gameplay programmer working at Crytek. So he basically worked on the Crysis franchise. Some people at Rockstar North. Also somebody who had a job as technical artist for BlackRock Studios, worked on really fun game called Split Second. BlackRock Studios doesn't exist anymore. It was a company of Disney and they shut down. So now he's working somewhere else, called AU. A technical artist working at Brink, working at Splash Damage for the game Brink. And yeah, we have lots more of them. But if you want more information about digital arts and payment, yeah, here's the link. It's just digitalartsandpayment.be. So now about the topic of today. I used this presentation yesterday for the Microsoft Student Partner Summit. So you already know about XNA, so I will skip that part. Basically, I want to show you how easy it is to port your XNA games using another platform called MonoGame to multiple platforms. So I'll skip to the MonoGame platform. So this is all about XNA, your first project. You already know about that. Content pipeline, basic engine, spreadsheets. So yeah. One thing I want to mention if you're interested in game development using XNA, I wrote a book together with a colleague about creating your first mobile game using XNA. You start from scratch and build up a little basic engine to create your own games on the mobile, the Windows phone. It's released in December, so it's not yet available. And the second thing we did is create a video series. It's about 3 hours. And there you learn about XNA 3D game development. So if you're interested in creating 3D games, definitely have a look at this video series. It's already available, and it's for just Windows-based computers. It's an XNA, of course. So now, XNA and Windows 8. You guys already use Windows 8? Yes? We use Windows 8? Okay. Who has never seen or heard about Windows 8? Who has never used Windows 8? So, I'll give you a quick sneak peek about Windows 8. So, welcome to Windows 8. It's all about putting the user in the middle of its own computer with all sorts of apps. So those are basically all apps. So we're not talking about games anymore. Games are apps now in Windows 8. So a lot of information, but it's all you're in the center of it. So these things are called or apps. I already told you. But this is they call it the Metro style interface. This is a game we made. So all the apps start in full screen. And the problem now, if you want to create games for Windows 8, you can't just use XNA to create such a app for Windows 8. You can develop games on Windows 8 and run them, but they're just desktop apps. So the same as with Windows 7, just in a little XNA screen. So they're not Windows 8 apps, they don't have the Metro style. And if you want to submit games to the Windows Store, they need to have the Metro style. You can also submit desktop apps, but you need a special license to do that. So MetroStyle and XNA apps is not supported by default, but there's another framework called MonoGame, and you can use that framework to port your XNA games to a Windows 8 MetroStyle app. So it is possible. So what is MonoGame? MonoGame is just an open source implementation of the Microsoft XNA 4.0 framework. So MonoGame uses the same object names, class library names, namespaces like XNA. So it's just like creating an XNA game, but under the hood it's all open source and other stuff. So it's open source. So the goal of MonoGame is to allow XNA developers to port their game using MonoGame to multiple platforms. So the platforms you can port your game to are iOS, Android, Mac OS X, Linux, PlayStation Mobile, Windows 8 Metro, and there are coming other platforms too. So if you have an XNA application, you can just port your code, copy paste it in theory with MonoGame, and it will work on those platforms with a little tweak work. So behind the scenes, MonoGame uses several other open source projects, such as OpenTK. That's a framework to do all the graphic stuff on Android and iPhone. And SharpDX is a DirectX wrapper, so managed DirectX version. And it's used to do all the graphics, audio, and input for Windows. So SharpDX is used on Windows 8 by MonoGame. LedGram is also an open source library. It has to do network stuff using UDP and TCP connections. So how do you start with porting your game in XNA? First of all, you need, of course, the MonoGame framework itself. One place you can download it is at Codeplex. Last month they released a new major release of MonoGame, MonoGame 3.0. It's still beta, so it's still in development. But it was a major release. It fixed a lot of bugs. When I ported my first game, I didn't have an installer, so I had to download the source and build the entire project and fix a lot of bugs. So now it's a quite stable version, MonoGame 3.0. So it comes with an installer. They're all binaries, so no source included. And the cool thing is, it comes with project templates. So you can just open up Visual Studio and start your own MonoGame project without linking all the project things and source things together and to create your project. So here's a link, just monogame.codeplex.com. And it's of course open source, so you have access to the source of MonoGame. You can get sort of GitHub. It's also the place to report bugs, issues, and the cool thing about using the source of MonoGame instead of the build is you have access to unreleased features. So features that are not included in the major release or the major last release, you can still access them using the source. So one of those unreleased features is support for Windows Phone 8. So you can also port your games to the Windows Phone 8 platform. Oops. So now I'll show you how you start your first MonoGame project. So of course you have to use Visual Studio 2012 to create games for Windows 8. So let me start with Visual Studio 2012. Starting up. So for porting games you also need Visual Studio 2010. I'm gonna need that to build your content, but I'll show you that later. So, okay, it's going. So now, if you want to create your own new MonoGame project, just new project. It's very simple. It's going very slow. So here we have the category MonoGame, and here you can choose between the project type. MonoGame with XAML support or MonoGame without XAML support. So I will create a new project, demo. Okay, so I chose the MonoGame with XAML support. Do you know what XAML is? WPF? Yeah, okay. So while that is loading, come on. So, two project types, one with XAML, so one is with WPF integration, and the other one is just without WPF integration. So the cool thing about the project type with XAML integration or WPF integration is that it allows you to use XAML controls into your own project. It's also easier to add the Windows 8 experience. So with Windows 8 you have a lot of extra features, so a settings chart, I will show that later on, and also something that's called an add bar. So if you click right, it appears an add bar. Same on touch devices. If you slide your finger from down to top, you will have the add bar. So that's a default feature of Windows 8, and using WPF you can also integrate that into your game. So I think my project, come on, escape. So my project is generated. So this is my MonoGame project, and I will compare it with to a regular XNA project. So I received the cool Pong game from your lecturer.
It's not Pong. It's an original game.
Some dog.
Not inspired by Pong.
So dog pole game, something like that. So I will use that to port it using the MonoGame framework. So in this Misty Bats project, we have two projects. You already know that. We have the game project and the content project. But if we have a look at our MonoGame project, what is missing?
Content.
The content project. So we have no content project. The only thing we have is a game project. Go. So the content project is not yet supported by MonoGame. So the easy solution is just create games without content. Easy as that. But okay, all games need content, so there is a workaround available. And I'll show you how to do that now. So creating a content project for MonoGame is a huge task, but you can do it on another way. I'll show you that now. So it doesn't have a high priority on the list now for MonoGame, but it will be supported in the future. But for now, you will just have to use this workaround I will show you. So that's why you need Visual Studio 2012. If you want to use content in your MonoGame framework, you have to build your own content using a MonoGame content builder project, and it's only supported for Visual Studio 2010. So, create a new project, and again, MonoGame comes with a lot of project templates. So here you see that we have a lot of templates. So those two, we need those two to create our content building project. First of all, yeah, you can't really see what it's saying here. But this is our content project, this one. So I will create one of this, just somewhere on the hard drive. So misty balls. Have content builder. Okay. Okay. So generating my content project. There we go. and we want to mimic XNA. So we're also going to add some kind of dummy game project. We won't really use it. It's just because it allows us to build the game, so the content gets built. So dummy project. Okay. Oh, I think I did something. Yes, so instead of adding this solution, okay, go away. So I'll reopen this content build project. I made a little mistake. Do it this way. Okay, new project. Dummy project. Okay, that's better. So now, as you can see, we have something that looks like our XNA solution layout. Two projects. One is the game project itself, and the other one is the content project. So we still need to do one thing. We need to link our content project to our game project. You can do it by right-clicking your game project at not reference, at content reference, and select your content project. Okay. So now we're fully set up to build our content for the MonoGame or for the Mono framework. So the content I want to build is the content of Misty Balls. So let me search that content. Oh, Misty Balls master. Okay. Okay, so this is all the content I need to build. So I just selected all. So sprite font. Okay, all the bars. Okay. So I copy that to my content builder project. Don't have a lot of space over here. Okay, so So this works the same way as a normal XNA project. Just add your content to the content project. And I need to delete this one. Okay. And do you use a JPEG or a PNG?
I can't remember. Oh, you can't keep both. I think the PNG probably.
It's the same. Okay. So for the rest it is fine. Okay. So before we can build our content,
Actually, I don't use either of them. I just think it's. Oh no, sorry, I did use one. Yeah.
okay. So before we can build our content, we have to tell this project what processor he has to use. So MonoGame comes with its own processors. So for most of the types, you have your own MonoGame processor. So MonoGame effect, MonoGame texture, MonoGame song. So you have to set them all to the correct processor. So for example, those sound effects, I'll put them to MonoGame sound effect. All the textures, I use MonoGame texture. And of course the songs, MonoGame song, and the sprite font. MonoGame sprite font. So we're almost there. The content processor are set correctly. Because MonoGame targets multiple platforms, some of the content has to be built specifically for a platform. So here in the solution configuration settings, you can choose for what platform you want to build your content. In my case, it's for Windows 8, so I select Windows 8. And then the only thing we need to do is build. So now I'm just building my content, and he's generating my .xmb files. And those are the files I need to load my content in a MonoGame. Still building. Okay, build succeeded. Now we have to locate those files. So here are my projects, then Lavender State, release, content. So those are my .xmb files that my MonoGame framework needs for the game. Okay, so I already created my MonoGame project. So you have a game class, same as with XNA, and if we look to that game class, you'll see that it also looks the same like a normal XNA class. So we have the initialize load content, unload content, update, draw, with all the same object types. It's just the same. But to use content, we don't have a content project, so we have to add the content to this project. Here you see it's looking for a folder called content. You can change that to assets, for example, because that folder already exists. But I will just create another folder here and call it content. So, content. And just copy your build content files to that content folder. Okay. So one last important thing you can't forget is to set the build action of all your content to content. So that way he will copy all those files to the build folder, so your game can locate them. If you don't do that, he will say, I can find your files. Okay, so we have our MonoGame project, we have our built content. The only thing we need now is our game code. So basically, you can just copy paste your code, and that's what I'm going to do now. For 2D games, most of the time it will work out perfectly, your game will run, but not everything is yet supported in MonoGame. So if you do 3D graphics, you can hit some roadblocks. But this is a 2D project, so I will just copy paste my code from one to another project. So first of all, I will start with my game class. And here we go. So Mr. Bets, game 1. So this is all the code of the game, of my game class. Control A, C, and A, V. So of course, make sure that you use the correct namespaces. Move. And I will just copy my classes into this project too. So we have the whole bad game entity, and those two are used. So I'll just copy paste them into my project. So again, change the namespaces. Remove, and the last one, demo. So this is it. So this is my Goussaert plugin telling me all kinds of warnings and errors, and if it's not red, I have no errors. So everything is fine now. If I just build my project, I hope it will succeed. So I just copy paste my code. You saw that. So build succeeded. So let's run the game. It's deploying. So no, I just created a Windows 8 app. is just a splash screen, you have to change that yourself. It's loading the content now. I hope. So this is the Misty Patch game running on Windows 8. Yeah, well, it's not perfectly ported. You'll see that now. If I choose one player, yeah, you see there's a little problem with with my left pad. So that's a little thing you will have to fix. Yeah, and barking around. So, okay. Exiting. So good. Okay. Where are my stop buttons? So we started. For example, 2 players. Oh, works out fine. Point. So another thing about Windows 8 and adding the Windows 8 experience to your game is that every app in Windows 8 can be closed like this. So your games don't really need a exit button. So that are things that you can delete to let it blend in more with Windows 8. So that's about it about porting games. It's really simple. So that was the demo. So basically I just copy-pasted my XNA code into my MonoGame framework and it worked out. But yeah, it will not always work. Yeah, you have to take into account that some things changes. You don't use the full .NET framework. You use some kind of .NET framework for Windows Store app. So if you use code for used in the full .NET framework, it could be that it doesn't work on the .NET for Windows Store apps. Another thing, MonoGame is still under development, so not everything is implemented yet. So things like 3D, advanced 3D features, custom shades, GPU scanning, there are still little problems with that, but they're fixable with some hacks. Then Windows 8 features, how to let your game blend in with Windows 8. First of all, you can create your own app tile, make it interactive. You have to think about screen management, landscape orientation, portrait orientation, the process lifetime management, and Windows 8 apps can be suspended. So if you're not playing them for 2 minutes or something like that, Windows 8 will just stop it. So you have to hook on that event and save all your data or something like that. Use the settings chart and the app bar. I'll show you that later. Okay. So in Windows 8 Store, if you create your game using MonoGame framework, you can easily submit it to the Windows 8 Store. So why would you do that? First of all, you sell in a global marketplace. It has a flexible business plan. You can charge for your game. You can give it for free. You can add some kind of trial mode. So choose what right for your app. Also, there is an entire list of app certification requirements that you have to meet. So it's all black and white, so read them and just create your game in such a way that every requirement is met. And a personal app dashboard. So if you submit an app, you have a personal statistics dashboard for your app. You see who is playing it, how long they are playing it, is it a man, is it a woman. Just all sort of statistics to make your game better. So yeah, the how, I will say that. So if you submitted a game, it's available in the Windows 8 Store. Yeah, we already ported all the Magic Cup games. So that's the last thing I will show you. So those are all the games we've ported. This is the Influence game you saw, the one that had the third prize. So the settings chart in Windows 8 is something new, settings. So this is the settings chart. You need to implement this because every app need a privacy statement. So it's just a link to your own privacy policy, so that's a requirement. If you don't have it, you can't submit your game to the App Store. So this is the game. You can also play it on touch devices. So that's the cool part about Windows 8. The store is for touch devices, for tablets, and for just computers. Then the app bar I was talking about. Yeah, resume. So this is just a binary puzzle generator. So this is the app bar. Most of the Windows 8 apps have this thing. It's just a new way of adding buttons into your application. You just add them to the app bar. So here I have two buttons to go back to the menu or to reset everything. Okay. Are there still questions?
Those are on the Windows 8 store now, those games, are they?
Yeah.
Great.
So yeah, you can find them in the Windows 8 store. Just search for Digital Arts and Entertainment and you will find all our apps. Oh, yeah, that's right. So those are all games of our students, and a few we wrote ourselves. Okay, other questions? No? Okay, thanks for listening to me.